So you've gone through orientation and the orientation packet. You've done your training. Now you're going to have your first home visit. Some people have many home visits. It's a matter of how many things you get done on that checklist and how many things does the licensor see that need to be taken care of before your home can be licensed. Things that they're looking for are things like, well, swimming pools. Swimming pools are hugely dangerous for children, and children in foster care most often have never been to swim lessons. If you're a mom, you know how competitive it is to get your kid into swim lessons. You have to get in line at a certain time of day, and then you got to drive them 3 times a week. The kids that come into foster care have been abused, neglected, or have a mental or physical challenge. These are not kids that are easy to get into swim lessons. And so a lot of them don't know how to swim, and it's something to be really cautious of is around open bodies of water, because foster kids simply do not know what to do. And so that's something where restriction around swimming pools is very, very strict, and around bodies of water, very, very strict. The other kinds of things they may be looking for is immunizations. We want to see if your kids have all had their shots, because we don't know the immunization records of foster kids, and we don't know if they're going to come, in sick to your house. It is not uncommon in foster care to get kids who come into your home with scabies or with head lice or any of the things that are very communicable among kids are going to come through your house if you're a licensed foster home. So they're going to be looking to make sure you have current medical records, you have explanations for the prescriptions you're on, those kinds of things. And so how in-depth that goes is really going to depend on the agency. So I'm not able to tell you exactly how depth it's going to be, but it's going to invade your privacy. You know it's going to do that during the interview and the first home inspection. Now, oftentimes there's another home inspection where they come back to see if you finished all of the tasks that they asked you to do to get your home prepared. And it's also going to depend on what age of the children you are. Obviously the preparations they're going to vary on the age of the child. The next step is going to be waiting and waiting and waiting. Now your foster home licensor is taking that pile of paperwork, the layout of your house, the fire escape plan, all of these things you put together, taking all of that paperwork and accumulating it and putting it together into a succinct story and forms that make sense, that they can be submitted to the state to be approved as a licensed foster home. And the state licenses all foster homes. Your private agency is managing that license, but the state still has to approve it. What happens next? So there's waiting, and then there's probably a phone call. Some people get something in the mail or email, but most often I think it's a phone call. That's when you become a licensed foster parent. If the child becomes legally free, then you'd have the option of adopting them. So it's the state's goal in all foster care situations to return the child to their family. And so that's the first goal of the state. They're going to try to reconcile that child to their family, either with their birth parents, which would be the first step, or with some other family members if that's possible. So all of those have to be exhausted. Native American placements need to be placed in Native American homes, so those will all be exhausted as well. And once those are all done, then the foster parent is in line to be asked if they would adopt the child. That's the hard part about foster care adoption, is that you could have a child who's with you for a lot of time, and if they're still legally tied to their parents or to their community, it could be a while before you know if they're going to be legally free for adoption. And that's the scary, scary, scary risk. Because there is this part of foster to adopt that is, you love a child, you think they're going to be yours. Everything indicates they're going to be yours. And then they go home. They go home to a different relative, they go home to their tribe. It's a scary part of foster care adoption. But here's my challenge to you. Would those kids be better off if they were with foster families that didn't care about them, didn't want to adopt them, and didn't love them? Well, of course not. The child's in the best place. They're with people who love them wherever they are, with their biological family or with their foster family, right? And you might not agree with the case plan. So you might not think this is the best thing for the child the rest of their life. The best thing for the child the rest of their life is to be with you, right? But you've got to stop and think about if the decision's going to be to return them home or to a family member or to their tribe. Where's the best for them to spend the time that they're in foster care? Don't those kids who get returned home deserve a loving family just as much as the kids who get adopted? It's a sacrifice. It's a big sacrifice. It's a sacrifice of a child you love. That makes it of biblical proportions. But we all know that we have a Heavenly Father that made the sacrifice of His Son. And so when we're fostering to adopt, we're taking the chance that we might be making that same sacrifice. What a beautiful role model we have, huh? Next question. So Terry asks, what are the requirements to foster to adopt? To foster to adopt, one needs to meet all the requirements of a foster parent and all the requirements of an adoptive parent. So it's a lot of requirements. Now, of course, it's going to vary state by state. Adoption and foster agencies can add more requirements than the ones that are already made by the state. But generally speaking, the requirements about your home, requirements about your personal life, requirements about your finances, and requirements about your character. Yeah, because everyone loves to have their character examined. But aren't you glad that foster and adoptive parents are questioned in these ways? If you think of the bigger scheme of things, yeah, it is good that these things are asked. So, requirements about your home. The home has to be safe for kids. It has to be in a safe location, and it has to be prepared. And they're going to give you a list of all of those items that have to be done. The house has to be relatively clean. It has to be somewhat organized enough that you're going to be able to find all the paperwork you need in a moment's notice. And we have requirements about your paperwork. Things like marriage licenses and immunization records and letters of reference. They're going to talk to you about your childhood, how you discipline kids, how you view your childhood, how you view kids in foster care. Are you ready to adopt? Are you ready to have this child be part of your family equally with your biological children or your biological nieces and nephews? Are you ready to accept special needs that are going to affect your family? They're going to look at your finances. The money that you get for foster care is just a reimbursement of expenses. So they know it's not going to cover your expenses. It's not intended to cover your expenses. They're going to ask for tax forms. They're going to look, if you've had a bankruptcy, they're going to look into that. Because unfortunately, children have been harmed for the money. And so they're going to make sure you're not dependent upon that money. It's a big priority of the state. And adoption costs money. You've got to pay your lawyer. There's paperwork fees. There are fees for an agency. Now, the state and the federal government have ways of reimbursing those fees, so you may be able to recover that money. In Washington State, we consider, as a foster parent or adoptive parent, you can continue to receive their DSHS insurance. They continue to have medical insurance, which is a big bonus because you don't know what medical needs you're inheriting. These are not your biological children, and they may have more intense medical needs than any kid that you would have biologically. And so the state needs to take some responsibility, and they do take that responsibility seriously. Adoptive parents continue to receive a payment. It is negotiable, and it all depends on how much is in the budget that year. Okay, so wrapping up, Erin asks, am I crazy? I think she meant for doing this. Yes and no. Yes, you're crazy because the risk is so high, and your heart will be broken, guaranteed, and you will cry, and that won't wear out. When they're in high school, they'll make you cry a lot, and then when they are college age, they're going to make you cry. That's called parenting. It'll break your heart. It's also the most wonderful thing in the world. I love my children so much, and I love my foster kids so much. That is my family. Yeah, you're crazy, but it's a good kind of crazy. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them below. I'm sure the more qualified people will chime in with answers. See you soon. God bless. We had 11 foster kids in 5 years, which is not a huge number at all. We were primarily respite foster parents. Respite foster parents take a child for a short period of time. They're regular foster parents